Hello, you're listening to a Heroes Welcome, episode 18. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Wes. I'm here with Andrew.
And it's good to be here. It's been a crazy week in Overwatch. I had a lot of stuff going on. We got Gamescom going on. We're going to talk about it a little bit. We got the biggest tournament to date so far, and we're going to talk about that a lot, and some news, developer updates, and a lot of other stuff to get to.
Yeah, we're talking about Bastion, and you're talking about Gamescom. Yeah, so Gamescom, for those who don't know, it takes place in Cologne, Germany. It's the single biggest gaming convention in the world. Hundreds of thousands of people, and obviously Blizzard was there. They had all of their intellectual properties, so even StarCraft. But
Overwatch.
Yeah, obviously we're Overwatch shows. Lots of Overwatch stuff there. They give us some new releases. The Bastion short, new map. We'll be talking about all that.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. I know you wanted to talk about a little bit of something containing Blizzard at Gamescom as well.
Yeah, well, they had Dustin Browder. He's one of the guys that leads the music through all the franchises Blizzard. If you know Blizzard, World of Warcraft, Diablo, he's behind most of the music there, and he composed a live orchestra there, and it was amazing. So if you're into music, game, original soundtrack kind of stuff, it was amazing. Check it out. It's like an hour.
Yeah, really good stuff. I mean, Dustin Browder has always been a really good composer. I know we both enjoy the music from all of Blizzard's stuff, and it was really great to see them come out and really show some of that live. So check it out.
Yeah, and it's on the Blizzard Entertainment YouTube channel. The one that's actually labeled Blizzard Entertainment. They don't have much videos up there, so it's easy to find that one.
Yeah, definitely. Check it out.
So let's get into the news. We have the animated short that's out called The Last Bastion original story. I'm sure you checked it out.
Yeah, definitely. I watched it a little bit of a live, then actually rewatched it a couple of times, check out some stuff. I was really looking forward to it. It was definitely an interesting one they did. But, I was looking for a little bit more with Bastion. They kind of left a lot of it hanging out there. I kind of wish they would have delved a little bit deeper into Bastion, but it's cool to see Bastion in that setting, especially in the nature and stuff like that. It was really cool. But what did you think about it?
I love the nature scenes. I'm a big nature guy. I think they're kind of showcasing their ability, with the robot and his feelings and all the little emotions. Everything from the sound was perfect, the animations was perfect. I think it's just like a showcase of this is what they're capable of, and it was really, really good. I mean, I'm not a huge Bastion guy myself, but we'll be covering him inspired by this new animated short. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I definitely thought overall it was a really good animated short. Like you said, a lot of the stuff that they dealt with, the emotions, stuff like that, was definitely right on spot. But I was just hoping they'd delve a little bit deeper into Bastion. He's kind of a little bit of a myth out there. We don't know a lot about him. But, it was very good animated short. Definitely check it out. It was really cool.
Yeah, maybe there's just not too much about him. He's one amongst many thousands of robots, and he just happened to
be one of the surviving ones. And that's kind of another thing that they talked about in the past with a lot of the story. They don't want to fill in all the blanks. They kind of like the idea of leaving a lot of it open. So, maybe that's kind of more...
That's pretty much like his beginning story, right? Before that, he was just a regular killing robot, and all of a sudden, some sort of emotions, and, the bird plays a role.
Right, but they kind of... I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but they kind of left it out there at the end. So, but... Yeah, like I said, it's done really well. I really liked the emotion that they showed in Bastion, stuff like that. Was really good. So check it out. Definitely, it's a good one.
Right. So we got the animated short that happened at Gamescom, and also a new map is called Eichenwald, and it makes sense, right? Because it takes place in Germany, the games convention, and they have a new German map.
Right. So a little bit of coincidence there, but definitely looks like a really cool map. I don't know what you thought about it, but has a lot of verticality and stuff like that, a lot of interesting places and parts to the map, and it's a very different map than what we're used to.
Yeah. So we do know that it is a hybrid map, so we're used to that, right? So it's going to be a payload and a capture point.
Right.
Right. And but yeah, visually I noticed quite a bit difference. I don't know if you saw that, but it looks very, very appealing. Maybe just the lighting and the colors. It just looks a lot different, which is what we want. We don't want it to be cookie cut and everything look the same, right? But beautiful scenery, the castles, like old German. Yeah,
it's very nice area. The visuals to the map are just, amazing. They did a really good job. All the colors are really good in the map. It's a very interesting map, and a lot of different stuff kind of coming together in the map. And it's a little bit different than what we're used to. Like we said, it is a hybrid map, but where it ends is very different. So it's actually going to end in like a castle, inside a castle. So you're actually going to push the payload all the way to inside the castle to be able to get, it's the German commander's, armor is what you're getting at the end there.
Yeah, so like I said, it looks amazing. I see tons of little perches, tons of little things. You just can't wait to go in there, get your hands on it. And we did talk about it in the past, but they are actually building a map that is a brand new style that isn't introduced in the game yet.
Yeah, we have. I mean, we've heard tidbits about it. We haven't seen anything from it yet, but hopefully it will be coming soon. I know they already said that this map was kind of in the pipeline and already being tested out, this Eichenwald. So that's now going to be, live in the game pretty soon here. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very interesting map. Like you said, a lot of stuff to climb up and use inside the map. But it's going to be a fun one for Genji, that's for sure.
Right, and with the new map, we also got a new Reinhardt legendary skin that kind of goes along with that as well, right?
Right, so the actual German commander that's in his, final resting place, like on his throne inside the end of the map there, is actually going to be the armor that Reinhardt's going to get, and there's going to be two different versions of that, the pristine version then the overgrown version, and they're really cool. I know I looked at them already. I know you were looking at them. They're very, very cool versions.
Yeah, they're most likely going to be the best Reinhardt skin. I mean, it's obviously subjective.
Yeah, definitely, but it's just really cool. I mean, they're very interesting. They stand out different, so...
Right, so let's talk a little bit about competitive play. Season 2 is going to be kicking off here pretty soon. The launch is September 6th. That's not 100% sure, but we're thinking September 6th.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've got. Of course, anything could change as things go on and they get information back from the PTR, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But, they've been pretty good with their timeline so far, so I bet on September 6th.
Right, and just to reiterate, the seasons do follow the seasons of the world, right? So the summer was a little bit shorter because we started halfway through, kind of. But, we could expect, every 3 months to have a new season. It's defined. We could expect it. And, yes, let's talk about the developer update because we know a lot about Season 2 from that.
Right, so, of course, Kaplan made another development update and got to talk about a lot of the stuff that's going to be coming in Season 2. So a lot of stuff changes. So again, just to mention, if we didn't already say it before, they actually are still going to be keeping with the 1 hero limit. That's one thing they kind of mentioned previously, so that will not change. Season 2, they're going to be going with the 1 hero limit as well. But a lot of different changes to the skill rating. I don't know if you want to kind of break down for everybody some of the changes that are coming.
Yeah, so, Blizzard has been very receptive to feedback, so, a lot of things changed, like the hero limit. We could expect those kinds of things to stay, right? And things kind of like coin flips and these weird things like that. We could expect things like that to change. So hopefully, it's a good sign. But yeah, let's talk about skill rating. So skill rating is going to be changed. The whole scale is going to be changed, right? So right now it goes from 1 to 100. Kaplan was talking about how it was very misleading if people didn't actually understand the math behind it, right? It was like a bell curve at 50. And, he gave the example of a player being at 60 is really in the top 6% of the entire player base, which is really good. But 60 out of 100 doesn't feel really good. So the whole new skill rating system is going to be from 1 to 5,000, and you only go up in whole numbers, which is something else he also talked about. Before, if you win or lose a game, you wouldn't even go up a rank or down a rank. You're just getting fractions of a point. So now you will only increase or decrease in entire whole numbers.
Right. So, I mean, it's really about the perception of the skill rating that they're changing, which is really good. We talked about it in the past, and I feel like this 1 to 5,000 is going to be much better. I mean, going up whole numbers or down whole numbers is always good. It makes it really easy to kind of see where you and other people sit. As well, they're going to be adding tiers kind of back into it. So previously, the first iteration in beta that they had some sort of tiers. It could be a lot different than that. But so each of the skill ratings is going to have, tiers from all the way from, bronze, silver, gold, diamond, platinum, master, and grandmaster. And typically, they're going to be about 500 skill rating per tier. So a good example, gold is going to be about 2,000 to 2,499 for that tier.
Right, because just increasing the skill rating scale, going from 1 to 5,000 doesn't fix it, right? Because people still don't know, where do I lay? Is 4,000 really good? And obviously 4,000, we know is really good, but the average player, may be like, oh, well, that's only 80% and so on. So we do have the tiers, so people will know exactly where they stand, right? Bronze, silver, gold. It's very relatable, and we also do know that you won't be dropped out of those ratings as well.
Right, so some of them. So basically, except for Master and Grandmaster, the two highest, you won't drop out of the other tiers. So Master and Grandmaster, you can drop out of all the way down to, I believe it's Diamond. But other than those, you cannot drop out of. So it's really good for, the average player to be able to get into their rank and see where they lie and kind of stay there. And it makes it easier, like I said, for us to relate it to one another. But of course, they want to make sure that the top ranked players, the Master and Grandmaster, that they're fighting for those spots all the time.
Yeah, and the same thing for season 2, where the highest obtainable rank that you achieved is going to be what you're going to be rewarded at, because we will be obviously getting the points that we've been getting at the end of the season, and so I like that because obviously it incentivizes you to keep playing the game, right? So if you just hit, let's say, silver, and you're like, oh, I don't want to go down to bronze, obviously we know that can't happen, but even more so, it encourages you to push, try to get,
right, because
if
you hit that silver rank, you're always going to get rewarded for that silver, even if you go backwards, which, you're not going to drop out of silver, but then it always encourages you to go up.
It's important to note that the points will change. From what we understand, you won't drop out of tiers. So if you're a silver, you're never going to go back to bronze, but your rating will change. Your 1 to 5,000 skill rating.
So your rating can still drop, but you'll never drop out of the tier. So you'll always be able to consider yourself a silver or gold player, whatever you get to. So another thing with this change, of course, they're going to be changing the way that your competitive points work. And so thus far, any competitive points that you've earned will be multiplied by 10. And then the golden guns are going to be changed as well. They're going to cost about 10 times as much.
Right. So competitive points, the naming conventions are kind of strange. Competitive points, I don't know. They probably could have come up with a better word for that. Maybe they'll come up with something, but obviously competitive points are what you get when you win games. Before you got 1 point, and now you're going to get 10 points per win, because obviously they multiplied the cost of the golden guns by 10.
Right, as well as the stretch in the skill rating. So that's going to change. Again, we mentioned Master, Grandmaster, Diamond. You won't drop out of those. Just the Master and Grandmaster that you will drop out of. But they actually set it up so Master, Grandmaster, and Diamond players have to continue to keep playing. They want to make sure that they're constantly there fighting for those positions. If they do not compete for more than 7 days, then they will actually start to lose ranking. It's about 50 skill rating every 24 hours, and they'll only drop down to the bottom of Diamond. So they will never go past that point, but then at least they will have to fight their way back up once they start playing again. And kind of the same goes for the top 500. If they're in the top 500, you have to continually play matches. One, you have to make sure that you've already played 50 matches to even get capable of getting the top 500 as well.
Yeah, so pretty much this only applies to probably the top 3% or less of players. But once you are in the Master, Grandmaster, Diamond, if it goes to Diamond, it might be maybe 5% probably for the most of the player base.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage.
Yeah, so you will have some decay. So, the vast majority of people, you're going to be the rating you are.
You won't have to worry about it, yeah.
Yeah, so if you are in those higher ranks, you just play one game within 7 days. Pretty easy.
Yeah, it's not asking a lot. They just want to make sure that people are not just completely avoiding playing at all once they got their ranking.
I think you mentioned Platinum. Do we know, is Platinum part of it? Because we know Gold and Diamond.
So basically the tiers break down like this. So you have Grandmaster at the top from about 4,000 to 5,000. You have Master at 3,500 to 3,999. Diamond is next at 3,000 to 3,499. Platinum is 2,500 to 2,099. Gold is 2,000 to 2,499. Silver is 1,500 to 1,999, and bronze is 1 to 1,499.
So pretty much 500 intervals, starting at 1,500 for bronze
and going up.
All right, cool. So, is that something you like? You think that's beneficial?
Yeah, I definitely think. I talked about it in the past. I think it's definitely a better way to go. I like the tiers. I've always liked the way that's set up. I definitely like having only the whole numbers and having a much larger pool of skill rating. I think I mentioned that several times in the past, that the 1 to 100 is just not enough. So I'm definitely looking forward to this, to seeing how it works out.
And it's also important to point out, it might be brought up later, but you are only able to play with friends within 500 skill rating.
Right, so it's one of the things that they're reconsidering, and like I said, we've talked about it in the past again, and I don't know why this wasn't something I would have thought would have been obvious from the beginning.
What existed in the game, but it was just such a huge span. I think it was 50 skill points.
Yeah, it was basically you could play with anybody, which is just really weird to me. I mean, the first time I grouped up with anybody, I was just like, that's amazing. You could group up with pretty much anybody, and you don't have to worry about it. It just seems really weird that they didn't think of that before, but definitely glad that they're looking into that now. So 500 within... You'll only be able to play.
Yeah, so the bronze player won't be able to queue with the gold, and the platinum won't be able to queue with the silver, and so on.
Right, exactly.
All right, so let's talk about sudden death. We talked a lot about it, but it is being removed from Season 2, hopefully never to return again. That includes the coin toss. If you've seen that coin toss, that's not going to happen anymore.
Right, so this is one of the things I kind of want to talk about because I talked about it in the past, and I mean, I think they're doing the right thing so far. I mean, we'll have to see kind of how it plays out. I definitely love that they're getting rid of coin toss altogether, but I played a little bit of the PTR. I don't know if you had a chance to play at all, but it just draws seem really weird to me. Like, honestly, I would have much rather had a very rare sudden death than this draw thing. I mean, it's supposedly not supposed to happen often at all. It's supposed to be super, super rare that draws happen. But, I've already had it happen a couple of times to me. So
that's interesting because obviously there's only two ways of becoming a draw off the top of my head, right? One is you have a payload, and the payload on both teams don't move it a single inch at all. That's like extremely unlikely. That'll never happen, right?
Or the hybrid. The hybrid maps where they don't even cap the very first
right, and
point
the other
to
point,
get the payload.
Right, so the other one is either a capture point or the hybrids where you capture the point A, and then payload or the next point. So if both teams don't capture point A, you're seeing that happen a lot?
I mean, not a lot. Like I said, I've only played maybe 5 or 6 games in the PTR so far, but I mean, I think 2 of the 5 I've already had draws happen on. So I mean, I think that's another thing with it's just a matter of where you sit in the skill rating, because I'm a little bit lower in the skill rating, and I mean, I'm seeing a lot more of that happen. People in the lower skill ratings don't know how to attack like they should.
Okay. But I mean, I still think it's going to be extremely rare to get a tie. I guess they will be allocating some points even in a tie. I think 3.
It's 3 points for a draw. So if you end up in a draw, at least it's not completely wasted, which I like. It's cool. But again, I hope things will be much more on point and much more rare. But I don't know. I mean, I liked having sudden deaths. I just again, we agreed that it happened way too often. But I mean, I guess if you have the option of draw or sudden death, I would much rather fight it out and just have a winner rather than just, okay, you both win, you both lose. It's the same kind of thing. I don't know.
I mean, time will tell. I think that the new system is definitely ideal. And in my head, I'm thinking, how many games have I seen in the competitive scene where both teams aren't able to capture point A? I've seen it happen, but it's very, very rare, like under 5% for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to consider, though, with the time-bank system, it's not, I mean, a lot of people consider only the first attack. Obviously, somebody's going to push it. But what I seen mostly was they went the first time around. We both pushed it all the way to the end. We both had time remaining. So then we go again. And then when you go again, you have much less time remaining. That's when the draw happens.
Yeah.
You only have a minute left on the clock, and people can't push, within a minute. I mean, like I said, it should happen very rarely, and I'm hoping that it'll be that way, and then it will be much better. But again, it's just kind of we'll have to see how things go.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on it. We'll talk about it, see how it pans out. So let's talk about assault maps. So pretty much after you capture point A, as long as it's not the very first point A you cap, each team is giving a 30-second time.
Right. So basically, not the very first point cap, but every single capture after that, you will get 30 seconds added to the clock. Just because, like Kaplan mentioned in the developer update, that a lot of times you would be coming back and have this really cool momentum swap where this team's coming back, but then you only have so little time. You cap the point in sudden death, or in overtime, I mean, and you're not able to even make an attempt at the second point. And that just feels really bad when you feel like you're coming back and you have a chance to win and you're just kind of shot to the ground right there. So they want to give you a chance to come back at that point.
Right, so as long as it wasn't the very first time you cap point A, every time after you'll get a 30-second added to your timer. And I do believe that that's given to both teams to keep it fair.
That's actually what we're going to be talking next, and that is only when they're bumping the remaining time. That does not account for this that we're talking about. So, no, that is not given across the board. The 30 seconds is only given to when you cap it. That's a different... Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second, but that's basically the 1 minute remaining. So, previously, if you had less than 2 minutes, once you capped both points, once your round ended, they bumped you up to 2 minutes to give you a chance at it, and they're actually going to reduce that. So, now you're only going to have a minute. If you were under that minute, they're going to bump you up to a minute. They're not going to bump you up to 2 anymore. So they kind of bring that down a little bit.
But both teams get that minute.
But both teams will get the time that's the difference. So say if your team only had 30 seconds left, they would get bumped up 30 seconds to a minute. So then that 30 seconds would be given to the other team as well. So it's exactly fair.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's what you're thinking of.
Right, and that obviously applies to the assault maps. Let's talk about the payload and hybrid maps. So teams that push a payload all the way with time remaining will have an additional round to push payload with some remaining time.
Right, so kind of what I was talking about, both teams are going to push the team, and then it's all the time bank. So if you each have time remaining, then you'll go again with that time remaining. So it gives you an incentive to make sure that you're not only pushing it all the way, whereas in previous examples, it didn't matter how much time was remaining. It was just that you pushed it all the way. Now it actually matters because that leftover time is what you have to push it again.
Yeah, because you're being rewarded for capping a point much sooner, right? Because that was one of the
Right,
major problems we
so-
had.
Yeah, so even if you both cap it all the way, the team that did the best is gonna have the advantage next time around.
Yep, and that's the way it should be. And we talked a lot about ties already, how, they should be theoretically extremely rare. I do believe that's going to be the case. And we talked about the conditions that could cause a tie. And some points will get rewarded to both teams in a tie. Because we get 10 per win now in this new system, right? So
Right, and you get 3 for a draw.
Yeah, everyone on a team. Both teams.
Right. So one of the other things that people talked about with everything coming to the time bank system, with now the hybrid and the payload maps coming to the time bank, they were talking about maybe the matches being a little bit too long, so they want to kind of trim out any extraneous time that they could. So not the very initial assembly your teams, but any subsequent assembly your teams within the map will be trimmed some of the time off, and so that will hopefully make matches a little bit shorter and keep them within a reasonable time span as well. And we already kind of talked about the 500 skill rating range for grouping as well.
Yeah, so Kevin talked a little bit about the competitive games getting a little stretched out in time, so they're trimming a little bit of time where they can, and you will only be able to queue people within 500 skill rating. And hopefully that coverage wasn't too complicated. I mean, pretty much, the sudden or the time bank system we've seen already with the capture point maps are pretty much applying that to the hybrid and payload maps as well. So you're getting rewarded for capping and completing the map sooner, and you just do the match over again.
Right. So now for the PTR. So again, if we didn't mention in the past, this is what's going on in the PTR right now. Things are obviously subject to change, but it's pretty much very much in line with what we mentioned in the developer update. So one of the things I did want to mention that was kind of cool, just in the general stuff, Symmetra's ultimate status is now going to communicate when she has her teleporter up how many charges are left, which I think is very useful, and it's going to be really awesome.
Yes, one of those nice little changes. And again, like I said, this is a PTR, so things can and definitely will change by the time they go live, and we'll definitely keep the audience to listen up to date, right? So any other changes coming up will definitely keep you in
the loop, definitely. So we'll look for changes. So the needing healers as well got a little bit of change. So when you're in the game, if you need healing and you use that emote or whatever you want to call it, is going to also tell your allies to group together, and it's going to give you a marker on your healer, just the healers, Anna, Lucia, Mercy, and Zenyatta, from marker above their heads, so that you can locate them easier, which is kind of a cool. Then also we got some news about some new sit and laugh emotes, which will be coming as well.
Yeah, so, a bunch of freebies sounds interesting, and
a lot of quality updates, just simple stuff that they're having time to update.
Yeah, so pretty much, I think what happened there is, it's interesting, like, healers could call out for healing instead of them just saying, I need healing. Most healers can't heal themselves anyways, to be honest. Instead of just saying they need healing, they'll tell enemies, come get heals to me, they'll put a marker. But notice Symmetra's not on that list because she can't heal directly, right. So they give her a special one with their teleporter.
Exactly.
All right, cool.
So the competitive rankings, the skill rating tiers, we kind of mentioned that before. Like I said, it's from Bronze to Grandmaster, 500 range between them. All the way up from Bronze to Grandmaster. We mentioned, Bronze, Silver, Gold, Platinum, and Diamond tiers you will not be able to drop out of. It's only the top 2, Master and Grandmaster. We mentioned that. Let's see. Diamond and Grandmaster and Master players also have to continue to participate. We talked about that. Within 7 days, they will start to lose 50 skill rating within 24 hours. The players that haven't participated in 7 days will immediately drop out of the top 500, which is really cool too, because again, if you're top 500 or you're chasing that, you don't want to be chasing against someone who's in that position and they're never going to get bumped out because they're not playing anymore. So that keeps people playing and keeps people in the running for that top 500, which is really cool.
Right, and just to be clear, you have to play within 7 days, and when you're not playing in 7 days, every 24 hours you get a hit. Yeah, right. So you don't have to play every 24 hours, but after the 7 days elapse, then you'll see a decay every 1 day, 24 hours.
Right, on your skill rating. Some, the map changes. We talked about the time bank system is coming to payload and hybrid maps. We kind of talked about that. Let's see. We talked about the the competitive points being multiplied by 10. So any existing points you have now will be, multiplied by 10 so that things are kept even. Competitive wins will now reward 10 competitive points instead of 1. Draws will give you 3 points. Golden guns, again, are going to be multiplied by 10. So they were 300 before, now they're 3,000. And they did kind of put in a little competitive soft cap. So now 6,000 is going to be the most you can accrue by matches. They did kind of mention that at the end of the season rewards, you will be granted competitive points for your end of season regardless. Even if you've hit that 6,000 cap, it's not going to not give you your end of season rewards, which is definitely good.
It's called a soft cap because you won't be able to acquire more points from playing games, but the very big lump sum at the end of the month, it'll temporarily give you a little, increase your max.
Exactly, but it also incentivizes people to spend that as well.
Yeah, sounds good. And I don't know if we missed that, but if you had to play a certain amount of games to be in the top 500, I see it here.
Right, so yeah, you do have to play 50 games to even be considered in the top 500.
And I think that makes sense. I have a few friends that were like rank 70 just out of placement. And right away, I mean, that might be top 500 depending on, how fast you did your placements.
Right. Well, then again, if you did your, placement matches, that's kind of what they're negating here is if you did your placement matches, you ended up really high up, but then also other people could move down. So even if you weren't top 500 yet, if you didn't play after that and say, like you said, you ended up in the high 70s and someone else moved out of the top 500, it could theoretically put you in the top 500. So they don't want that to happen. They want to show people that the top 500 are the best of the best, and they are currently playing, and they're not just got there because they ended up really well in their placements. Yeah,
because I think what happened was season 1, the way they did it that time is they didn't implement the top 500 until a couple weeks in the season, and I think the system's better, right? So you have to have at least 50 games, so you have a good sample size, and then after 50 games, then you could be the top 500. Right. You have the special logo, little icons. People probably see them. They're gold. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's an exclusive thing to the top 500. We want to make sure that we're giving that only to the people that deserve it. People that are constantly playing, not just people who sat at that rating.
Yeah, and those rewards are the same as the other ones where if you get into the top 500 and come down, you still get the rewards at the end of the season because you get a player icon and a special spray.
Right, so it's always the top watermark that you hit, you will earn.
And, man, I almost got top 500, maybe. I don't know. I wasn't able to play too much the last couple of weeks, unfortunately. It was sad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we could always enjoy a little bit more Overwatch in our lives for sure. But they did also make some changes to leverage penalty as well. Just basically, you're going to have to compete in more matches before you get out of your lever penalty, which I think is good as well. Just any more incentive against leaving is better, of course.
Yeah, I haven't seen much issue with lever penalty, but I think when the season first begins, that's probably when it's the most epidemic. Doing your placements and stuff, having levers. So, more strict lever penalties. I'm in favor for. Sorry for people with bad internet connections.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where if you have bad internet connection nowadays, you kind of need to step that up. I don't know. My internet's not the greatest in the world. I don't pay a lot for it, but I don't have any problems with the connection issues. So. Again, players competitive must be within 500 skill ratings to group. I think we mentioned that before. And now to kind of get into the hero balance is what we've all been waiting for.
Right, this is what people care about, right? So hero balance individually. So generally across the board, ultimates that consume the meter when activated will drain quicker. So it's about a quarter of a second. It used to be 1 second. So what that means is the Pharah, that ulti then died immediately after. Or didn't get the full value out of it, Reaper.
Yeah, like a lot of times you could have ultimated, and if you get killed immediately, you almost have that 100% still when you res, which is kind of a little ridiculous. I mean, you should be penalized if you made a bad decision and used that ultimate in a very bad way. So, again, just kind of tightening things up around there and making things a little bit more fair across the board.
Yeah, some of the heroes' projectiles were resized. I know Hanzo was one of them for sure, but it just makes it more accurate. When something hits something. What you actually see is representative of what actually happens.
Right. So yeah, they actually reverted that previous change where they reduced the size of the projectiles. They went back to that. So it's one of the changes we got to keep an eye on. I think Hanzo's one of the biggest corporates that we were watching, but they mentioned that it just had a lot of unintended, consequences for doing that. So currently, this is the best way that they can kind of keep it in the game. And they are definitely going to look for changes to, again, try and reduce that size, but it just had too many unintended consequences.
All right, so let's talk about Diva. She got a little change. Like we said before, this is a PTR, so this can change, and we'll always keep you updated with that. But the defense matrix did get a slight change. The change is the ability regens after a second. We're talking about the defense matrix. Before, it used to start generating we're talking about the time,
Right, exactly. So there is a time space between when she fully depletes her defense matrix to when it starts to regen, and it used to be 0.5 seconds, and now it's a full second. So it kind of gives people a little bit of an opportunity. They made some really good changes with the defense matrix in the past, but it was a little bit too strong in the fact that she could kind of just eat pretty much any major ult with this ability. So they kind of wanted to give people a window at which they can use their ult, I think, is kind of the main thing that they mentioned.
So yeah, it's a slight nerf to D.Va. People who like to spam defensive matrix, will be able to do it less often.
Right. So it's just kind of a consequence of just constantly trying to keep up the defense matrix. It should be very strong, but it needs to be used in the right way. You can't just keep it up the whole time. That needed to be changed. So. All
right, so let's talk about Hanzo. He's definitely one of the most changed heroes we see right now. So he has a 30% decrease in speed while aiming. It used to be 40%, so now he's able to move a little bit faster. Obviously, he has a movement speed penalty when he's got his bow out.
Right, so when you actually have an arrow in the bow and you've got it, pulled back, now it's only going to be 30% instead of 40% reduced speed. So it kind of makes you a little bit faster while you've got that arrow out, which I think is necessary. I like the change. I've got to play with that a little bit in the PTR, not a lot, but definitely that could change. We never know what it's going to be, but so far it seems pretty good. They also increased the maximum speed of his projectile. So again, this changes depending on how far you pull the arrow back. If you fully pull it back before you release it, that's obviously going to change the speed of it. But at the maximum, it is increased by 30%, which, in the PTR so far, it seems really fast to me. So it's more on par with the hit scan characters. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on and see what they decide to do with that.
Yeah, so definitely the most impactful change is the projectile. So Hanzo's arrows shoot much faster, 30% at full, knockback or pullback on the string. And yeah, it's not quite hit scan, but almost hit scan. So
yeah, it's definitely very fast. Very noticeable change.
Well, him being able to perform his role as a sniper will probably be better. And I think it's a good change. We don't see that much Hanzo.
No, Hanzo definitely needs a buff, and I definitely feel like this is kind of the way in which they can do it. But we just have to see. A little bit that I got a chance to play him. We got to remember he still is kind of a mid to long range, and a lot of people play him at the mid, especially myself. I like to play him there. And at mid range, it seems a little weird for that speed. But we'll see what happens.
And his RNG arrow goes faster too?
Yeah, the arrow goes faster too. Once it spreads, it doesn't change speed, but the actual arrow itself, before it spreads into the RNG arrow, it is much faster as well.
All right, so let's talk about Mei. She got a little change with her ultimate Blizzard, the projectile. We're talking about the projectile now. Pierces barriers, and the radius was also increased about 20%.
Right. So the actual container that she throws will actually be able to go through barriers. So
it's like a drone.
Right. Exactly. So now, if that Reinhardt's in front of you with his shield up constantly, you can still throw it through the shield and get him and his allies in the back as well.
Yep. And that radius is going to be much larger. It used to be 8 meters. Now it's 10. So that's about 20% increase. And, we covered Mei in the past, pretty much you don't want to waste your Blizzard on people who could just, get out of it very easily. So now, if you throw your Blizzard on a Zenyatta or, so people who don't have much movement, you're pretty much guaranteed to get that freeze on them.
Yeah, not only that, it still makes it difficult for people like Genji and such to get out of it because of the increased range. They can still get out of it, but, they have to be quick on the draws. So.
Yeah, I think it's the zone control as well. It's kind of like Hanzo's ult where you're not really expecting to get a bunch of kills, but you're able to control the zone, and then you use that as an advantage.
I'm not supposed to be getting kills with Hanzo. I'm always trying to get kills, anyways. But
just Dragon by itself. Maybe if you combo it something, but
Zarya combo is always nice. But yeah, so definitely good changes in Mei. I look forward to seeing her more often competitive. That's ultimately where we're trying to go. They want to increase her output a little bit, get her into some competitive. So McCree got some changes as well. So again, kind of in keeping with the whole ultimate draining, his Deadeye drains over a 0.25 seconds, so a quarter of a second period, and it was about 50% activated or 0 once confirmed. So again, you could pull that out, hold it all the way up until the very last second, and then cancel it, and you could still get back 50%. So again, I think they're trying to make it more punishing when you use it in a bad situation, which is always good.
Yeah, so the McCree Deadeye operated as a huge zoning tool, and you only had to use 50% of your ult to do that. So now it will drain over time, and I think it's a good balance change. I like McCree. He's obviously still going to be very, very good. He's doing really well on the PTR right now, but it pretty much means that you can't get the both best of both worlds, right? You can't have like a really, really strong, impactful killing ult and then have a really good zoning ult at just half the cost.
Right, exactly. So I definitely agree with this. We'll have to see where they kind of go and what they think. But I mean, I got to play him a little bit in the PTR, and I definitely like the change. But it might be a little bit too quick. I mean, even if you get, if you use the ult in a bad situation, like I used the ult and I canceled it right away, and I lost pretty much all of my ultimate immediately. So I don't know. Maybe they'll increase that a little bit. Maybe it'll drain a little bit slower. But, again, they just want to make it to where the people that are using it well and playing the character really well are, benefited from that.
Right, so let's talk about Mercy. She could use a little bit of 11 right now, right? We don't see a ton of Mercy being played. Her healing beam is going to be increased about 20% output, which is pretty good. Obviously, she was one of the better heal per second characters in the game, but we did see Ana get a buff, and she has a really high heal per second, assuming you're getting your shots off. So I think this bumps Mercy up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Mercy definitely needed a little bit of love. She was, at a time, she was one of the requirements for a team, and now she's kind of fallen off. So definitely needed that buff there, and we'll kind of keep a track and see if they reverse that again. I mean, they kind of tried that in the past with the damage buff, and then they reverted that back. So we'll see how that works. Again, the Resurrection got a little buff as well, so the allies will be able to move much quicker. It's only about 2.25 seconds instead of 3 full seconds. The allies will be able to move once they're res. So it makes it much easier for her to get that res off and still keep her team alive instead of resing them directly into a major ultimate.
Right, and I'm not complaining. I'm a big time support player myself, and I actually really do like the current meta with the Zenyatta and a Lucio meta. I really enjoy that. Mercy's still probably my number one played character if you look at my account history, but I've been playing a lot of Zenyatta lately, and I like Zenyatta a little bit better than Mercy.
Yeah, I mean, Zenyatta is definitely fun to play. I definitely enjoy playing him a lot more than I enjoy playing Mercy. But I mean, we just want to keep everybody on an even keel. So that everybody has a chance to kind of play the people that they like. Genji again, they got a lot of changes.
So the
Genji,
Shimada brothers, man, they getting the most changes, huh?
Yeah, I definitely think Genji needed some changes. I've got a chance to play him in the PTR. Just very noticeable changes. So if Genji is one of the heroes you like to play a lot, you'll notice. So his double jump no longer resets when wall climbing. That's really huge for him. His mobility was just like the main thing with Genji. It'd keep you alive in the weirdest situations, and it allows so much dominant play with him. I think they thought they needed a little bit of nerf to that mobility, so that got nerfed. His dash no longer deals damage to the traps, and it no longer bypasses Junkrat's steel trap. So if you got the trap down on the ground, you can't just dash through it. You will get trapped by that as well now. His Swift Strike no longer interrupts quick melee, which this was really weird for me. I mean, I read the patch changes, in the PTR, and I went and played it, and it's very weird to get used to. So you're no longer allowed to, melee Swift Strike instantly. It's kind of a little pause there, so it's definitely something you got to get used to. And then the Dragon Blade, they reduced that from 8 seconds on his ultimate to 6 seconds, which is a big deal as well.
Yeah, so I think the Dragon Blade change isn't that impactful. I think you just have to be, more concise with, okay, this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to do it. The double jump, for people who don't realize the way that works, is you used to be able to double jump and then wall climb, and then the wall climb kind of reset the double jump. Also, just touching the ground resets the double jump. It kind of has an internal meter, like, okay, have you touched the ground within the last time you jumped, kind of thing. So yeah, so you're not going to be able to double jump, wall climb, with the double jump again. And the dash change, that was probably, working as intended now.
Yeah, the dash change isn't that big a deal. It's just kind of a quality of life thing that they made for Junkrat and other traps, which I don't have a problem with at all. And the double jump, again, it'll take some getting used to, but, the best players are still going to get really good use out of Genji's mobility. He still has a lot of mobility in Swift Strike and the double jump and wall climb. But I think, honestly, the weirdest thing to get used to is the Swift Strike change. No longer interrupting the quick melees. It's just something that you're so used to using. When we covered Genji in the past, that's one of his major combos, being able to melee Swift Strike. So it's not a crazy big change, but it's just very different to get used to. So people who are used to playing it the way it is currently, it'll be different. And again, I think you mentioned the Dragon Blade. It's not a crazy amount of time. It's only 2 seconds. But again, like you said, not a crazy change. The best players are still going to know how to use that ultimate to the best of their ability, but I think it negates some of the people who are not as good with it, just being able to kind of go all crazy ham and just take the whole team out.
Yeah, I'm actually was most surprised about them not making changes to ledge jumping. I thought that would come way before the Swift Strike change, but I'm thinking maybe it's one of those things where obviously Blizzard didn't design Genji to be able to ledge jump and launch himself fly through the air through a ledge. People, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, the ledge jumping.
Right.
But maybe that's just something like they embrace, like, okay, that's cool, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they feel like it's that big of a deal in the current situation. I mean, it allows you to move around the map really quickly, but in situations where you're in combat, not really that impactful. I don't feel like so.
And ledge jumping, just a quick note, is pretty much, Genji's able to wall climb, so he kind of like goes over ledges. But if you combine that with other momentum, especially from like a Swift Strike, it gives you a huge boost, and you get really good setups for Dragon Blades, for example. You'll be able to get like way above your enemies and pull out your Dragon Blade, initiate very strong, points from that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways that you can use it, but I feel like there's only a small percentage of people that even know about it that much. So, Lucio got a little bit of a change as well. So they actually decreased his speed boost from his Amp It Up. It was from 100%, and now it's actually 70%. So it's 30% reduced. So just a little bit of a change, not that big of a deal. But
I think that's important because Lucio is felt almost as a requirement because of his speed boost. I mean, his ultimate is very impactful. Every support ult is very impactful, and that's obviously unchanged at the moment. But the fact that Lucio is able to, speed boost globally his whole team, it almost feels like you cannot play without it. And those are the kind of abilities you kind of want to, take a look at.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you look at competitive play as a whole, it really is at this point a kind of a requirement. A lot of regular players don't know about how strong the speed boost is, but in a team setting where you've got a really coordinated team, it makes so much of a difference to be able to amp it up, speed boost the whole team into a major push, and it just changes the dynamic of the field definitely. So. It's a little bit of a nerf to Lucio right now. It kind of brings him more in line. I think it makes it a little bit more optional, and hopefully we'll see some other healers in that wake. So,
yep, and Roadhog got a chain hook change, right? So pretty much I think what's happening is the game will calculate line of sight when the retracting of the chain comes through, and if there is no line of sight, then you're safe. So I think pretty much what's happening is, instead of calculating it at when he begins his chain throw, it's actually going to, server check, okay, do we have line of sight when the chain reaches the target?
Right, so it's kind of a little bit of a hot fix to his weird chain hook that will happen sometimes when you hook people and they'd be around the corner by the time the hook actually lands and it pulling them all the way around the corner. It felt really bad if you're that tracer and you're not even in line of sight and you just get wrapped around this corner and you just get one-shotted and killed. So definitely needed to be done. It's just a little kind of a hot fix to that.
And lastly, Zenyatta, right? So Orb of Discord, I called this a couple shows ago. The damage amplification got decreased from 50 to 30%, but also with that reduction of his Discord, he got a little increase from his main attack, Orb of Destruction. He used to do 40 damage, now it does 46, which if you do the math means if you Discord a target and you hit him with the Orb, you do the same damage after the PTR that you did before. It's just globally, the target's going to have a 30% increase of damage as opposed to 50, which is still better than Mercy's. That's probably the closest thing to relate it to. Mercy could damage boost one person, a 30% increase, but Zenyatta could pick out one target and his whole team is increased by 30%.
Right. So again, change that needed to be made. I mean, Zenyatta felt really good after the changes just recently, but still that Orb of Discord was way too strong. 50% across the board. You focus fire one person and you just take them out immediately. So that's kind of what they're kind of trying to nullify here is that overall that global Discord goes down a little bit.
And the same thing with Lucio, right, where you have something in the game where it almost seems mandatory to run in your comp because it's so good, like a 50% damage amplification.
Yeah.
So it just brings it in line with the other heroes of the game. And I think Zenyatta is still going to be just fine.
Oh, yeah. Zenyatta will be fine. Again, it's just a nice change across the board to the global of Discord. So some map balance changes, not a lot, but one kind of big one to note. So Watchpoint Gibraltar, the first checkpoint has actually been removed now. After the changes to the timing system, I don't think they felt that they needed that first checkpoint to be there anymore, so they removed that.
Honestly, in my opinion, I think a lot of it is people understand how to play the game better now, and that allows them to push a payload faster. The player base understanding the game it doesn't need that point anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't really change anything. I mean, that point could still be there. I think a lot of it stems from, like I said, the time bank system coming to the payload now. Makes it to where things are more evenly across the board. It's a measure of, the time taken to actually push it all the way to the end. So the extra point is not needed for the sudden death. So once they got rid of sudden death, they don't need that anymore. That's really the reason why they did it, I think.
All right, and lastly, something actually I've been really looking forward to is you're going to be able to turn allied health bars on in the options, control options, and that's for everybody, right? So we talked in the past that became available to Zarya and 76 because they both have abilities that complement and are dependent on the health of their allies. But now you can be any hero in the game and see your allied health bars.
Right, definitely. So it's a good change. It's a nice little tidbit for people who like to have that on, and you can go change that in your options under the controls tab.
All right, was there anything else you want to talk about?
So basically, menus added. Let's see. I think that's pretty much, we covered everything, I think. So I think it's time to just get right into it.
It just seems like a big, long ramble on the PTR.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that changed. So hopefully that was clear enough for you guys, and there wasn't too much going on there. But jumping into competitive now.
Right, so we obviously had the biggest tournament to date in Overwatch this weekend. Very exciting. It was a pretty good weekend.
Yeah, it was definitely. If you guys were there at Gamescom live, you got to see it live in action. It's really cool. For those of you that didn't get a chance to, you could have watched it on Twitch or on Blizzard's website. But we're going to cover the main points that we needed to hit. So before we jump into that, we got some team changes. So Team Dignitas getting into Overwatch, finally one of the other really big names that we were kind of waiting for. So they kind of bought out the formerly Creation Esports team of Numlock, Lynx, RTR, Bromos, and Texican and Dracaeus. So really, really good team. They showed up at the ESL Atlantic Showdown. They did pretty good for themselves. So definitely check them out. New team. As well as Tempo Storm, again, signing the untitled spreadsheet, kind of an Australian, New Zealand top team of that region. And we're still waiting for one more. They did mention that they have plans to pick up 2 rosters. So this is the first roster, and we're definitely waiting to see the second roster.
So it's always really exciting to see a brand new franchise enter the Overwatch scene. And obviously, in just the last, we talk about it all the time. It seems like there's more teams by the week. And the game is, in its infancy, really only a few, maybe 2 or 3 months in the life cycle. So yeah, we have Team Dignitas, as you said, and Tempo Storm, obviously 2, very well known and recognized organizations. Yeah, and Tempo Storm did say that they do plan on having 2 rosters, so they picked up this one, mainly based in Australia, and they have another one planned. So hopefully Ray Noodle can get on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely looking forward to the next one. I mean, this one's kind of a little bit different. Like I said, they picked up, an Australian, New Zealand team, so definitely a little bit different than what we're used to. So we're probably expecting an NA team to be coming around the bend.
All right, so let's talk about the ESL Atlantic Showdown. Like I said, this is the biggest tournament to date. This has been spanning over the last few months. We've been talking a lot about it. And it just ended today, this recording. They just had the games finish. Right.
So it was kind of earlier on in the early hours of today if you're on the Pacific time. But really, really, really good matches. If you watched any of it, if there are any matches really to watch, first round, Group A, Fnatic versus Misfits. Really great game. Definitely want to check that one out. I had a lot of fun watching that one. Out of Group B, Rogue versus Cloud9 was a really good match. It was very close. Very good plays on both sides of the fence there. Rogue kind of were on a downswing for a little while there, and they definitely showed up at this tournament. They definitely came to win. Playoffs, round 1, Rogue versus Envy. Again, 2 of the big teams kind of coming out. Rogue, one of the best teams in the EU, and Envious, the big hitter in the NA there. Really close match. Definitely check that out.
And did we want to spoil the winners? I know this is just minutes after.
Yeah,
not really minutes after, but
I don't know. What do you think? I don't know if we want to spoil it. I mean, we gave
we'll
away
just
a lot
say
already.
Spoilers alert. Fast forward 5 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Spoilers alert to anybody who wants to watch the Atlantic Showdown. Skip this part a little bit forward. The winners, Rogue from the EU, did an amazing job. They came out Rogue versus Reunited, really destroying Reunited 3-1. Did a really great job. Definitely.
Yeah, so obviously the news here is, in round 1 in the playoffs, Rogue fought Envious, which was by far the favorites, statistically. Right?
In the playoffs, round 1,
yeah, in the playoffs.
Rogue versus Envious, yes.
Yeah. So that's when Envious got knocked out right there.
Yeah, that was the big one. I mean, Envious seemed a little bit early on to have some jitters. They kind of shook that off with their play against Dignitas. I mean, even though we've seen a little bit of those jitters, they did sweep Dignitas 2-0. But still, definitely could tell that they weren't playing as usual as we've seen in the past. So a lot of that, I think, played into it. But still, they put on an amazing match against Rogue. I did not expect that to end the way it did, but 3-2 to Rogue. Good job.
Yeah, we're talking a little bit about it earlier, but Envious, they haven't had much experience playing live on stage.
On the LAN tournaments, yeah, they haven't had that much experience. They're used to playing online, tournaments so far, and so they've done amazingly well up to that point. They had a crazy streak going on, but it all has to come to an end eventually, I guess.
Yes, so congratulations to Rogue again, winning it on their home turf, being Europe. And congrats to them. They played awesome. I did catch the last game where Rogue was up against Reunited, the very grand finals, and Rogue took it 3-1. Great games. Obviously, you could go find those VODs, check them out. You'll see some awesome gameplay. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the competitive goes, also we had the other major tournament is coming around the corner here, the Overwatch Open, which is another big one, and that will kick off again August 25th for the EU and August 29th coming up for the NA final qualifiers. So stay tuned for that, guys.
Yeah, so the ESL Showdown was a $100,000 tournament, and the Overwatch Open $300,000.
Yeah, two really big tournaments right around the corner. So
let's get in our strategy. We're covering Bastion. We just had the cinematic video. We learned a little about his, beginning.
Yeah, so, I mean, we kind of got a little bit of insight into Bastion and how things are working around that. So we kind of inspired to do this character summary on Bastion, our favorite robot turret. So he is a defensive character. He's got 300 health, and 100 of that is armor.
Yeah, it's important to point out, we covered armor in detail, but armor is better than regular health. It does have some built-in mitigation in there. For those who have not heard that segment,
you can watch our previous episodes for that armor as well, so you can kind of get a breakdown. But yeah, it does have some built-in mitigation. Bastion has two major configurations. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit in a minute. But he has his recon mode, which is kind of his regular walk around. You start out in recon mode. He has very short range to medium range. He has a little submachine gun, has about 20 ammo. It's an 8 round per second fire rate, 60 to 20 damage per shot, obviously with some fall off there, and a 2-second reload. But hopefully you won't spend too much time in that recon mode. Most of your time is going to be spent in the Sentry, which is really good at all ranges, and it's really where you want to be with Bastion.
Right, so Shift by default is going to be on PC, how you change the configurations. And you don't want to underestimate the submachine gun in his recon. It's quite good, almost 76 tier. That's kind of how it plays out, a little bit of spread and stuff. But yeah, the Gatling gun when he is in Sentry is what he's known for. You're going to automatically jump to 200 ammunition. It's not related to the submachine gun ammo, so the ammos are not related.
Completely separate, yeah. So when you switch configurations, you have two different ammo sets, 20 in the submachine gun recon and 200 in the Gatling gun.
And it shoots quite a bit of the fire rate's pretty good, 30-40 rounds every single second. It does quite a bit of damage. Every Monkey Winston will let you know that it does hurt. It hurts.
Yeah,
blow people down.
Definitely not quite like his submachine gun. So it's about 4 to 15 damage per shot with a 2-second reload. So again, a huge jump in fire rate. It's going to make a huge difference there.
Yeah, and just listen a little bit longer, and we'll tell you how to get around the 2-second reload in the character discussion. But moving on, we did talk about, Shift is the default, how you reconfigure. You go from one to another. That is, your turret to your recon. And it doesn't take too much time. There's obviously a little bit of, cast. You're a little vulnerable for a little amount of time.
Right, and one thing to note is they are slightly different from one phase to the other. So recon to Sentry takes about 1 second, and Sentry to recon is only about half a second. So it's a little bit different there.
Yeah, so you could bail out a little bit faster. You see that dragon coming from the Hanzo or something.
Yeah, you definitely want to get out of the way of that.
You can move that. So he does have a self-repair default keybound. PC is going to be your E button. The way this works, it's not very intuitive right away, but you pretty much hold it down. There is a 1 second cooldown, which is pretty much almost nothing, right? But you do hold it down. You use some auto repair. You could use it any configuration.
Yeah, you can use it across the board. It's about 25% of your total health per second, and it is a 1 second cooldown as well.
Yeah, a lot of characters don't have a self heal, so it's obviously a very strong point. You do channel it, but it's not going to be like a cooldown you blow or anything. But you do want to be aware of your healers. If they're able to generate some ultimate charge by healing you, because we have talked in the past where healing does charge your own ultimate now, but you want to be considerate of your healers. If you have a mercy and you're not in danger immediately, you could give her some ultimate charge by letting her heal you instead.
Yeah, so that's one of the other things about Sentry Mode. We're going to get into that in a minute here. But being in Sentry Mode means that you don't have to worry about moving around too much, but it gives you the chance to really survey the field and keep an eye on what is going on. And definitely that is very key to playing Bastion.
And for people who haven't been in the loot for a while, you do not have a shield when you're in
It's one thing we always got to mention because, some of those old videos, a lot of people are still doing some of those or have some of those out there, and they run across them. They see that shield that used to be there. It's no longer there.
And you do have a 360-degree spin access.
Right, so you're not limited on your axis of your spin. You can turn around 360 degrees.
Right, and a lot of new players do like the Bastion, so it's pretty fun. But let's talk about his ultimate, right? So he does have an ultimate. He turns into a tank.
Right, so his configuration tank mode, his ult or his default Q on your keyboard, you have no limit to your ammo, and there is no reload time whatsoever. He does actually go up 150 health, so a total of 400, but it does not heal, so any damage you've already taken will be still there. So it is about an 8-second duration, and you do have about a 1-second cast time to configure into the tank mode, so you are slightly vulnerable there, but shouldn't be too worried about that. Most people scatter like ants when they hear the mode.
Yeah, and they did make a change not too long ago. We covered it where he had, I think it was 600 total additional armor when he goes into his tank mode. So that's 400, but majority of it is armor. Again, some mitigation there, so it's even better than regular health. And he is turning into a tank, so it makes sense to have tons of armor.
Right, exactly. So again, it's 1-second cast time. It does have about a fire rate of 1 per second on those rockets, and it is 190 damage for a direct hit, and it does have some splash damage, which varies depending on range and such. And it's about a 4-meter range of effective damage for him.
Right, so let's talk about using all of his tools, all of his strengths. He has all of his abilities, and actually putting them to use. So we always emphasize play to your strengths, understand the mobility of the character, the combinations of abilities, how you're going to be able to get the most amount of value, talk a lot about value out of the characters, and using them, how you're going to position, every little choice that you make, how that plays a role.
Right, definitely. So one of the main things we're going to talk about is field of view. It's a big thing with Bastion. A lot of players do not consider it, especially when in other heroes, but it's definitely one thing you need to keep an eye on when it comes to Bastion. Your positioning, how you're positioned, where you're positioned, what your goal is as Bastion. So first thing to talk about is kind of his recon mode versus a sentry mode, when, where, and how. We kind of talked about that a bit. You're going to stay in sentry mode for the most part. You did mention his recon damage is okay. It's still, it's close to in line with Soldier 76, but again, you do not have very much mobility on him. So recon mode, not where you want to be. Sentry is where you want to be most of the time. So you're going to kind of move into position, get a nice position with Bastion, and kind of stay there.
And a lot of this plays on your team composition. If you have a Reinhardt, that's a very good combination with Bastion. Obviously, he excels at defending because he could cover, pretty good surface area. But, we see some strats with him on attack and some King of the Hill. Honestly, King of the Hill is where I see him most at the higher levels of play. Just knowing, how to position yourself. You kind of have a premeditated idea. Okay, these are a few different places. You obviously don't want to be one place for very long because people will counter you. And it's important to point out when you are in your sentry mode, you do have a headshot hitbox, per se, on the back of you. It's a big blue kind of core where you receive more damage. So you are able to spin 360 degrees, there's no limitations on you spinning around, but just be aware that if Tracer comes behind you or somebody, you will receive quite a bit more damage.
Right.
Like a critical
so keep
box.
In mind, you can protect that rear of your head there. So it goes from your front of your face like normal when you're in recon mode to back behind your head. So obviously, if you see a Tracer or a Genji coming up, they're gonna want to try and get behind you as best they can. So obviously, turning away from that is a really good idea. So positioning is key. Again, like I said, don't stay in one place for too long because people will learn your positioning and they will counter you. You do not have really any kind of movement ability as Bastion, especially when you're in sentry mode. So again, using your windows of time when there's not huge pressure on you to be able to move and set yourself in a good position. Your field of view, like we mentioned, that's a really big thing. So you want to keep in mind to keep that behind of your head, that headshot position close to a wall or somewhere where it's hard to get to and it's not easily accessible. You don't want to be out in the middle of the open where you're really accessible to getting.
And your reflex, the 180 should be really quick.
Right. That's definitely one thing you got to keep an eye on.
Just mow them down.
And you want to make sure that you have a huge field of view. You can get a really good use out of that sentry because honestly, sentry mode is where you want to be, but you don't have any mobility. So if you're in sentry mode, but you're up against a wall or you're facing one small corridor, you've got no real field of view. You're not getting any real value out of Bastion that way.
Right, and most people probably already know those kind of things, but obviously you could set up on top of the payload, and the payload moves with you, things that move, like moving platforms and things. Bastion, you always see them try to get in those sneaky little spots, and sometimes people just do it for the sake of doing it, little elevators and stuff setting up there, but sometimes it'll work out for you, and it's also important to point out that you can, jump into sentry mode, so if you're on a higher elevated state, you could turn into sentry mode mid-air, so as soon as you land, or maybe even before you land, you're already ready to mow people down.
Right, definitely. It's just one thing to keep in mind, and not a lot of people know that. It's not very obvious right off the bat. So jumping into sentry mode, really good tidbit. Reloading, we've wanted to talk about that. We've mentioned it in previous episodes, but it's one of the big things with Bastion is when to reload and how to reload, and kind of a tidbit, a way to get around that as well.
Right, so Bastion, as well as some other characters in the game, they have ways to automatically reload their weapons without manually pushing R and reloading, right? For Bastion, the way that works is when you are set up in recon, you have 200 bullets, which is quite a bit. You do fire them rather quickly, but it's a huge clip. And pretty much my rule of thumb is I never ever reload on Bastion because I could always relocate. And by the time it takes me to pop out, it's only half a second. And relocate, you want to move around. You don't want to be too predictable. And as soon as you go back into recon, you're going to have 200 ammo. No matter what, it doesn't matter if you had 100 before. You always have the full clip. And just to mention the other characters who have that, you have Torbjorn. You could shoot his rivet gun. You could smack your hammer on your turret, repair it up or whatever. You go back to your rivet gun, it's fully loaded.
Yeah, Mercy.
And Mercy, right? So you pretty much never ever reload on Mercy, right? So even if you shoot, you're obviously, you could go heal, power boost somebody, whatever with your staff. As soon as you go back to your pistol, it's going to be ready to go.
Right, and one interesting thing with Bastion people you should consider is when you're at that point when you need to reload, a lot of times you have oncoming people who are trying to use that advantage, that 2-second window of your reload to kind of counter you, and instead of waiting that 2 seconds to reload, you can use that half a second to go from sentry to recon, and then you have immediately 20 ammo to shoot them down. And again, we mentioned it's no slouch. You can definitely take people out with that recon mode. So it's much better than dying while you're trying to reload. So definitely one thing to consider.
Right, so the automatic reload, when you change positions, you go, reconfigure. Also, you can cannon jump or a rocket jump. Same deal. A lot of other heroes are able to do this. 76, Helix, he can rocket jump, Pharah, Azaria. These are all characters who, at the expense of their own health, can get some more verticality and, take routes that normally they wouldn't be able to, or other characters may be pursuing them, or just to get to places faster, or places you can't normally even get to.
It's a really good thing for Bastion because he has quite a bit of health in his tank mode, and he can jump pretty good with that cannon jumping. So basically, you're just going to aim at the ground, you're going to jump, and then you're going to fire in pretty much quick succession, and you'll be able to rocket yourself into the air.
Obviously, you have to be in tank mode to do it.
Yes, definitely.
So, the other heroes are able to do it more often, but yeah, it's pretty interesting, and you always see it's pretty impressive when you see the Bastion pull it off properly.
Right, and it's definitely one way to get some value out of his tank mode because, again, it is a huge global alert when you hop into that configuration. Everybody's going to be aware of it, so you either have the team completely backing out or you have them trying to counter you very quickly. So using that is a good way to get some advantage on the team. Maybe you jump up and over around an obstacle and such, and you get behind the whole team, or you just come a different way that most people are not expecting, take the high ground and such. Really good way to get some use out of that.
Right, and we talked a little bit about self-repair. Obviously, there was some recent changes where you actually could generate a little bit of ultimate charge off that self-repair. Just knowing when, where, and how to use that is pretty important, for those Bastion mains to really maximize the value out of Bastion.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I see a lot is Bastions repairing when they're taking damage, and that's definitely not the best way to get value out of self-repair. I mean, honestly, with the amount of time you try and repair, you could easily just take the person out in either recon or sentry mode. So definitely probably not the best way to get use out of it. One good thing about it, though, is that you can channel that ability and you can still kind of look around and take a survey of the field. So it's a really good idea when there's downtime, when there's not a lot of pushing going on, to heal yourself up, make sure you're full health for the next push, and you can take a look and see where your enemies are and when your allies are at, get a good idea of what's going on.
Yeah, same thing with self-repair. Knowing when to use it applies to your ultimate. Just knowing, when you see those opportunities come up to use that ult, because it's definitely game-changing. A lot of ults are that way in this game, but you're able to just demolish shields. If you see them, at least boosting in or something, it could really deter. It's like, you hear the little whistle and what's about to go down. Right.
Yeah, definitely. When you hear that whistle, madness is coming. So definitely look out for good places to use that ult, and don't just use it frivolously. You can get a lot of value out of it. Don't use it into a major push or something like that where you're going to be taking out in that window of time when you're going into tank mode. It's another thing I see a lot.
It is one of the most OP ults in the game. A lot of people underestimate it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely super strong. Yeah, a lot of people run right into it and die, but honestly,
tons of splash damage. You're usually getting, multiple targets.
Yeah, it's very much like Pharah. You don't have to aim directly at the person, and you could still do a major amount of damage and take people out. Like Tracers is really good for, because you don't even have to hit her directly to kill her, and she moves around so much. A lot of times you're not able to directly aim.
And
it
will hurt yourself. We talked about rocket jumping.
Right, so it does do some damage to yourself. So keep in mind of that. But again, just knowing when to use it is the major thing with that.
Right, and anything else as far as the discussion of Bastion? Anything you think of?
I think that pretty much covers it. Just
He's
make sure that your positioning is really good, and just your thought process is really good with him. A lot of people just use him very poorly and don't get any major value. They get taken out really easy. One thing we did forget to mention, Genji is your mortal enemy. Watch out for those reflex. If you don't already know that, you can really kill yourself pretty easy with that reflect. So basically, whenever the reflect is up, you need to watch out.
Yeah, or snipers. Just it only takes half a second to move. Just move.
Yeah.
You keep active. But very new, user friendly, right? People getting into the game,
right?
And also that troll pick as well. It's one or the other usually.
Yeah, too bad for me.
But you could be a Bastion main and
troll pick.
Yeah, man, you could change the identity of Bastion, just one person.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen some very good Bastions, some very bad Bastions. So it's always a scary thought when I see people rolling Bastion out there. But yeah, I mean, definitely if you keep these things in mind. Move often, take advantage of both configurations, heal yourself, make sure you're doing very well to keep your positioning good and your field of view, and you should do all right with him.
Yeah, and communicate with your teammates. Obviously, Bastion does rely heavily on your friendlies. Just a simple Winston shield or a Reinhardt shield make you much, much more harder to kill and take down. So quite a bit of, a lot of people don't think Bastion, I got to communicate a lot, but he's definitely one of the more reliant on your teammates. So yeah, I think we are going to also continue with the trend with next hero. The next hero we cover for the next show. I think we'll get that from our listeners, right? So write us in. We'll give you the info in just a minute. And it's always listed in the description or the show notes or however you're getting the show.
Definitely. So I think that's going to do it all for this character discussion, and that will do it for the show. Thanks again for listening, guys. We will see you next week for our next show, and definitely remember to write us in any questions or any comments that you want to give us, and write us in who you want us to take care of on our next character discussion.
Yep, and the show is brought to you by Two Moon Studios. Once again, thank you so much to all the people who have taken the time to write us and reach out to us. We really do appreciate it. Doing this podcasting thing is something that's completely new to us. We are 16 or 18 episodes in now, and it's still fun and fresh for us all. You could email us at aheroeswelcomepodcast@gmail.com. We are also on Twitter at Two Moon Studios, and thank you so much again for everything. Till next time.